Friends, you've heard me say it many times on the show. If you are your only source of income, you're living in a very risky world. I mean, if your income is dependent solely on you and the hours that you are trading for it, your business model is built on sand and it can crumble at any moment. But hear me out, because whatever your business model, I'm for you. I might poke at single person businesses a bit from time to time, but it's because I know how risky they are as a business model. But I also understand the allure of the solopreneur model, especially in 2025. In this episode, I'm going to break down the pros and the cons of, let's call them the solo grinders, but also the mini empire builders, because the debate, my friends, is never settled, nor should it be. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the show. My name is Blaine Fine. I'm the founder of the Coaching Academy and your host for this and every single episode of the always sponsor-free Real Value podcast. So let's dive in. Now, to be clear, it doesn't matter to me which path you're on. I mean, the vast majority of appraisers that I coach come to me as, say, 1 or 2 person shops with little to no additional help. And as we'll discuss on today's show, I'm okay with that, as long as they understand the pros and the cons of that particular business model. Now, I know I've given some of you some grief over the years if you've listened to the show for any period of time by saying repeatedly that I don't think you should call the one-person appraisal business, for example, a business, because it's really more of a job than a business. But if me saying that offends you, well, then just imagine I never said it, and hopefully you can still take something of value from this episode. I say those things because I've been there. Like most of you, when I parted ways with my mentor and I started off on my own in the appraisal profession, I was a solopreneur. That's a newfangled way of saying that I was a one-person technician doing everything myself. And maybe the one big difference between the way most appraisers start out and the way that I started out was simply that I had already built several multi-person businesses prior to being an appraiser. I was trained in the appraisal profession also by a very smart entrepreneur and fellow empire builder himself, who had already built a sizable multi-7-figure residential and commercial appraisal business. And I knew when I set off on my own that I had zero intention of truly ever being on my own. So I jumped right into renting the whole second floor of an office building, building out 12 workspaces with computers and technology. And I think I had 5 appraisers and 2 trainees within the first, say, 3 months after hanging out my shingle and starting my business. Business building is in my blood. And of course, I have my parents and some life-changing mentors to thank for that. But that's not the right path for everybody. I mean, even though I had a busy appraisal office right out of the gate, I didn't necessarily have a busy appraisal business myself right out of the gate, nor did I have anyone helping me build it. What I had built was a community of appraisers all under the same roof, some of them renting desks and computer space from me, much like what would later become, say, WeWork-style shared office spaces, and some, of course, on a commission-based income split. I created the infrastructure in that office space. They paid me for the convenience of not having to build it all out themselves. Now, that alone provided some cash flow as a beginning and budding business owner and a little bit of income while I set out to do what I teach and tell all of you to do. Go meet people, do lunch and learns. You have to network, host events, network with other people, walk into banks and credit unions, meet the loan originators and the processors, meet real estate agents, give value to them all the time, and start building a personal brand. Friends, the solopreneur path can be a very rewarding one if you understand leverage. If you don't really understand leverage, well, then you just end up with a job. And don't get me wrong, like many of you have experienced, it can be a really well-paid job if you're in a good market and you've established a good reputation. So let's make the first case for the one-person business. Now, before we get into this, let me clarify. If you're the solo person responsible for all of the income generated in the business, despite maybe having an assistant or 2, you're still a solopreneur. Yes, you may have some semblance of a team, and I definitely applaud those who do, because that's a definite indicator that they understand leverage. But that's still a solopreneur job, since taking any time off typically means your income also stops. And depending on how your assistants are paid, well, then their income stops as well. So for the sake of this episode and the terms solopreneur and team builder, the team builder is someone who not only applies leverage via the use of, say, staff and assistants, but they're also applying leverage to the income generation side of things. Now, this might mean that you've got a trainee that can inspect even while you're away and you can complete some appraisal work, say on a laptop while on vacation. Maybe it means you have some licensed and certified appraisers working with or for you that are also generating income for the business. Whatever the scenario, the team builder in my comparisons in this episode is somebody whose income is not solely dependent on their own labor being applied in the business. Again, if you take time off, your income stops. Okay, with that out of the way, the case for the solopreneur, first and foremost, it's the lowest overhead and it's the highest, let's call it agility version of a job one can probably have. Once you're licensed, you can start a solopreneur style business with, say, a computer, some licensing fees, some MLS fees, some E&O insurance. So for, say, $2,500, maybe $3,000, you can be in business and earning income in the appraisal profession with no boss. I mean, you're your own boss. 100% control over your time. No personnel drama. No worries about what your people are saying to the customers. No training somebody else. No payroll stress. No management headaches. And nobody to answer to or for. In fact, the motto of the solopreneur might be said, if it is to be, it is up to be. Famous line from Zig Ziglar. Now, that's the argument or the case for being a solopreneur in the appraisal industry or the appraisal profession. And I'm all for it, especially if that business, it's the business model that lets you start to live out your dreams. It lets you stop working for somebody else, maybe get out of cubicle hell, away from those ghoulish human resource fun killers and quite often business killers. They understand almost nothing about business. And it gets you out into the world where you are the ruler of your own destiny. But of course, we can't stop there. If we're going to look at the pros of something, we also have to be open to the negatives or the cons of it as well. So here's the case against the solopreneur business model. And keep in mind, I've done both of these. I'm for both. The biggest issue that I've seen against this one-person business model is that you are the biggest risk to the model if you're likely, and you're likely the biggest bottleneck in the model. Your income is intimately tied not just to your time, but also to all of the other things that make up your time, your energy, your health, your mobility, your schedule, and of course, your motivation. If you stop, the business stops, which means it's not really a business, it is a treadmill. It is a job. And again, it might be a well-paid treadmill job that many of you are okay with. That is until you're tired of running on that treadmill and you can't get off. Or the treadmill breaks down and you're stuck with nowhere to run. Now, in that metaphor, the treadmill might be the market, it might be the interest rates, Fed policy, industry regulations, appraisal management companies, or the dozen other things that can throw a wrench into your business model, and often does. So many appraisers over the last couple of years are experiencing that wrench and that broken treadmill because their treadmill stopped when the interest rates increased. And that, my friends, is the downside and the fatal flaw in the solopreneur model, at least in this profession. No scale, no sale, no leverage, capped income, and of course, heading for a cliff. Now, I'd also say no legacy, except that you are still building a legacy as a solopreneur. We're all building legacies every moment of every day. The question isn't whether we're building a legacy or not. It's what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind, intentionally and deliberately. Quite simply, friends, solopreneurship can be a very rewarding model, offering lots of opportunity to somebody. You just have to also know the risks involved in staying in that model forever. Most solopreneurs are stuck in a trap disguised as freedom. It works for a while, it just rarely works great forever. Something breaks. So let's talk about what I simply call, at least for this episode, the team builder model, in contrast to the solopreneur. Now, to clarify again, for those who might start yelling at me because they might have a team of virtual assistants or some staff doing the low dollar and repeatable type work, when I compare these two models, when I'm coaching on this topic, I am concerned primarily with how many income generators there are in the business. And I'm talking about human beings generating income, not just how much leverage you are applying to the actual work. I mean, I love the solopreneur model when you are at the very least applying leverage via, say, additional talent, and you're offloading the lowest dollar per hour tasks. That tells me you understand your dollars per hour and the value of your limited time. I'm just not a fan of it long term because it relies solely on you for all of the income generation. So in the team builder model, in contrast, You're applying leverage by multiplying your value and your income beyond your own labor. I talk all the time about divorcing your labor from your income, or divorcing your income from your labor. I'm all about maximizing your income, but just not just for the purpose of having more income. You maximize your income for the purpose of then using your income as leverage into other assets that produce additional income that is independent of your labor and your time. That is the reason to earn more income. Those additional assets that you've invested in, they could be humans within your existing business model. They could be assets like income producing real estate, digital content and education, maybe your personal brand, could be vending machines, another business, etc. You use the income from your labor that you've traded time for money to leverage into other assets that don't require as much of your time. Now, with that being said, if you're a solopreneur and you're doing just that, using the income you generate with your hours to invest in other assets and income streams, awesome. You are essentially doing what I suggest in that you are building a team. It might just be a team of hard assets like real estate that is working for you while you sleep. If you don't wake up the next morning or just don't feel like working on that day, you still have something or someone producing income for you. That's why I'm okay with the solopreneur model, as long as you have a plan to leverage that model so that at some point, you can choose what to do with your time because your income is now decoupled or divorced from your time. The team builder model, at least in the appraisal profession, is one of the ways to create leverage and potentially wealth beyond your own labor. Does it take more effort? Well, yeah, of course it does. But it's just effort applied in a different way and in a different area than the effort you might be applying to generating all of your own income in the solopreneur model. Effort is effort, friends. You're either applying effort in this direction and getting one result, or you're applying it over there and you're getting a different result. The thing about effort is that depending on the reason you're applying the effort, you're expecting some kind of return on that effort. Let's call it ROE. When all of your income is dependent solely on you and your effort, you will always experience a level of what we call limited outcome distribution, meaning no matter how much of your hard work that you apply, your returns will always be capped. Let's use the example of baseball. No matter how athletic you are, no matter how skilled you are, no matter how liked by the fans you are, or how hard you swing at the pitch, the most runs or points in baseball that you can ever get is 4, and that's only with all the bases loaded. No matter how good you are, you will always be limited if it's all up to you. When you have additional income producers in your model, however, now your return on effort is multiplied. It is a different kind of effort. Is it better effort? Is it worse effort? It's just different. Managing, leading, teaching, coaching, and having a vision takes effort. Networking, speaking, teaching classes, and doing lunch and learns takes effort. It's a different kind of effort than, say, doing an inspection and picking these comparable sales, but it's effort nonetheless. The questions you should always be asking are, what is my ROE? What is my return on effort in this kind of work versus that kind of work? Does the one that looks to be more difficult have asymmetrical and outsized returns relative to that effort? And if the answer to that one is yes, what do I need to learn and who do I need to become to make that one almost effortless at some point? Remember, effort by definition is the conscious exertion of power. Things done over and over eventually require less and less effort, especially as you get better at them. I mean, almost everything requires the most effort at the beginning or when first learning how to do it. So if the thought of, say, hiring and managing and leading and training other people sounds like a lot of effort to you, well, it probably is. But it's also likely that it's more effort because the potential for much greater returns on your effort are the reward. Starting out anything requires the most effort because all of it is new and scary. There's lots of learning and skill acquisition required to build something bigger than yourself. But eventually, it takes less and less effort as you skill up, which is what multiplies your returns on that effort. Now, the primary purpose for being a team builder or an empire builder over being a one-person business is to multiply your efforts and get exponential returns on that effort. No, the primary purpose, friends, is not to serve a bigger geographic area. No, the primary purpose is not to serve your clients better. No, the primary purpose is not so that you can get on more appraisal panels or lender panels. Those are all outcomes. They are not the primary purpose of building a team. Leaving a seemingly stable job is hard. Leaving benefits from that job is hard. Going out on your own is hard. Building up a great client list is hard. Building a personal brand or professional brand is hard. Building your systems and processes is hard. Hiring and training other people is hard. Retaining those people and giving them a compelling future is hard. And scaling beyond your current skill sets is also hard. But every one of those things, and generally in that order, has greater and greater returns for the initial increase in effort and difficulty. And the great thing is we get to choose our hard. Why not choose the hard that has the greatest return on effort and greatest return on investment and gives you the most amount of life back in the process? Especially when you know that what was difficult at first will eventually become less difficult over time. We're talking about skilling up instead of always looking at something and going, that's too difficult. Now, two of the greatest benefits of the team building model are that you start to decouple your income from your time, and you are setting yourself up to get exponential returns on your effort. It's called leverage, friends. Asymmetrical entrepreneurial leverage. Now, does the team building model solve all of your problems? Well, of course not. It often creates new ones. But again, the idea is that each new challenge in a different model holds the potential for asymmetric leverage and outsized returns for simply choosing a different kind of hard or a different kind of effort. You know, you can always shrink back to the solopreneur model if things don't go well for you, or you realize you just weren't cut out, say, for leadership and management, which is the proof that the solopreneur model is capped at some point. If you can say to yourself, I know I can always go back to just me and do X number of appraisals per week and make X dollars in income, that is the sign that you have a ceiling in that model. You can calculate it. If the ceiling bothers you, well, then, of course, you can tweak some things in your system to become more efficient and go for higher paying clients and do some things that I teach every day to maximize your income as a solopreneur in the least amount of time. But the outcome will always be limited at some point, regardless of the effort. Just like hitting a home run in baseball. The most runs you can ever get will be 4 if the bases are loaded. If they aren't, the most runs you can ever get is 1. When you're a solopreneur, you will always hit a ceiling. You will always be capped. No matter how much effort you put out, you will always be capped on the returns. So let's talk about the cons of the team building model. Well, for one, we talked about leadership and management. Leadership is a skill set. In fact, I dare say it's the one thing we can point to in the appraisal profession that is the greatest contributing factor to the commoditization and decline of the industry. No sound leadership at almost every level of the profession. Yes, of course. Don't take offense if you're a strong leader. There are some strong leaders in their own companies and maybe in their markets, but leadership is not a character trait that predominates in the profession or the industry. The industry is filled primarily with, well, we know, technicians who just want to be head down, nose buried in a spreadsheet and debating on social media whether polynomial 4 is statistically valid as opposed to using the Fetzer method. I mean, it's all silly stuff when it comes to your life, your income, and your legacy. Nevertheless, if you're thinking of venturing into the team building world so as to multiply your efforts and your returns, I would strongly suggest studying everything you can get your hands on regarding not technical stuff, leadership, strategic vision, management of people, public speaking, because leadership is most definitely a skill set, and it's a skill set most don't have naturally. Yes, you can be born a leader, but most leaders were trained to be the leaders that they eventually become. It is a learned skill set. I've seen it over and over and over. Let's talk about another con of the team building model. It is that there is simply more complexity. And as I've said many times, complexity doesn't scale. Instead of just rolling out of bed and heading out to your first inspection, you're typically dealing with, well, everyone else's issues first. You're running a company. You have people challenges and client challenges, training, quality control, systems building, etc., etc. Now, if none of that stuff sounds enjoyable to you, well, count yourself as normal. Those things aren't enjoyable for most people, even the ones who are good at it, and therein lies one of the biggest paradigm shifts required to go from the solopreneur to the team builder. If you want exponentially greater leverage over time, your income, and your future, you're going to have to accept that it simply ain't all fun. And yes, I know that's not proper grammar. The solopreneur model is almost by definition a very selfish model because the solopreneur typically has a list of things they simply don't want to do. I'm not going to do that, which they use as justifications for being a solo operator. I don't want to train somebody else. I don't want the hassles that come with other people. I don't want to worry about the quality from someone else. I don't want to train my competition, and on and on and on. The solopreneur drones. And the list doesn't have to be that extensive. Just imagine the word limits or limited after each reason on the list, because each one of those things that we mentioned comes with a limit to your time, to your freedom, and to your income. Now, another con of the team building model is the pressure to keep everyone fed. When you build a business with other humans involved, there is some inherent pressure to take care of them, which is what most decent human beings would feel. Some people love that pressure, and in fact, they point to that pressure as the reason their business produces what it does, while others will simply say, I don't want that pressure, to which I completely understand. Now, a final con of the team builder model, and certainly not the last one, is that one bad hire can cost you lots of time and money. That's why I always advise people before they make that first hire to study up on, say, interview practices and questions, hiring and onboarding best practices, the cost of a bad hire, and also bad leadership, the red flags of future nightmare hire, and so on. If leadership is a skill set, so is attracting and interviewing and hiring and managing and retaining talent. And if you don't have those skills, it's okay. A lot of people don't. You'll either need to farm that out on a subcontractor basis, which you can do, or you need to bone up on that skill set. Okay, let's summarize. The solopreneur model pros. Let's go over the pros first. You are the product. You control the process. You keep the profits. Number 2, high profit margins, no payroll. You eat what you kill. Number 3, simplicity, minimal systems required, low overhead, fewer moving parts. Number 4, control. For those of you who are control freaks, you call the shots in the solopreneur model. You're responsible for the quality, very little to manage. Number 5, flexibility. You can pivot on a dime because it's just you. You can take a vacation whenever you want, which leads to number 6, lifestyle first. You can work as little or as much as you desire. Now that comes with some cons. Let's talk about those. The solopreneur model cons. Number 1, income ceiling. You're capped because in this model, your time is your inventory. When you run out of inventory, you have nothing else to sell. Number 2, burnout risk. We just talked about your time being in your inventory. When you run out of it, you burn out. Every single dollar you earn is tied to your physical labor and your efforts. That, in my opinion, is a con. Number 3, you're vulnerable. If you get sick, if you get tired, if you get injured, burned out, or you take a vacation, what stops? Your income stops. Number 4, con, the solopreneur model. You have limited leverage. Yes, you can hire some assistants, but that only aids in the efficiency. It allows you to cram more in less time. It doesn't completely decouple your time from your income. And number 5, con of the solopreneur model, there's no exit strategy. Death, a job, getting a job for somebody else, or maybe starting another business is the exit strategy. Okay, let's talk about the pros of the team builder model. Number 1, time and income leverage. You're building a machine that can run and earn without you. Number 2, scale. You're building something that can handle more volume, more and better clients and more markets. And by the way, scaling isn't doing just more, it's doing more with less, and then hopefully making more at the bottom line. Number 3, pro of the team builder model, leverage. You're building a machine that leverages the time, talent, and treasure of other people. Oh, I love the word leverage. You have to get used to saying that word because asymmetrical leverage is what's important. That's how you get return on investment and ROE, return on your effort. Number 4, playing an infinite game. You now have an income producing asset that can build long-term wealth, not just personal income. Number 5, exit strategy. When you have a team builder business, you have a variety of potential exit strategies. All pros come with cons. That's why we're talking about them in this episode. Let's talk about the team builder cons. 1, complexity, systems, hiring, training, and management. They aren't for the weak. You have to be strong. You have to be willing to wade into complex systems and processes. Number 2, something called margin compression, more expenses especially early on. You have to invest in the business to grow it. Number 3, leadership pressure. You must develop a team culture and have a vision. We talk a lot in other episodes about having a vision. Number 4, risk exposure. You have payroll and compliance and client churn and taxes, and the stakes are just higher. Number 5, it's a slower start. It's a longer runway to profitability potentially. So the bottom line, friends, is there is no right or wrong, only what works for you based on what you desire for your life and from your business. I simply encourage deep introspection and maybe more than anything, intellectual honesty within yourself for the justifications you might use to rationalize your choices. If your rationalizations for choosing one model over the other are based in fantasy instead of fact, well, suffering is the end result. You may end up suffering more than if you were honest with yourself to begin with. Solopreneurs build lifestyle businesses. It sounds great. Team builders build legacy businesses. There's no other way to frame this than to say, if our business and income depends solely on us, it owns us. As we've learned from Michael Gerber in the E-Myth, if you've never read the book, read it. Being great at the work isn't the same as building a business that works great. You're either a technician with a job or a strategist with a system. You're either a technician with a job or a strategist with a system. And I don't care which one you choose. I care which one gives you what you truly desire. I hope you got some value from this. Until next time, we'll see you on the next one.